Hello and welcome to episode number 6 of this podcast. My name is Elliot Greenman and I run this podcast with my friend Alexia Nell. This week's podcast is super positive. It's so great. I think it's my favorite so far. We start off talking about pain and paying attention to it and injuries in general and how your body can really change things with a positive attitude. And then we go on to talk about meaning, suffering and addiction again, and attention with regards to those, and something called the homunculus. And then we go on to discuss other ideas or things where, you know, you can really, if you have a positive attitude towards it, you can really get something fruitful from it. So I don't know if you remember the situation with Nike having plus-sized mannequins for their sportswear, and I think I mentioned an independent article or a news article in particular that was saying it was a bit ridiculous. I was a bit split in my thoughts to it. And then Alexia was talking about how there's just so much positive in that, focus on the positive and then we can kind of move forward. And then the same thing with regards to cars and things like that. So, yeah, I hope you enjoy this podcast. Again, as I say, it was really positive, and I hope you enjoy it.
Perambulations in franglais. Try. I don't think it's by not trying it's not gonna happen for sure.
Yeah, that's guaranteed.
That's it, 100% sure. But some habits that are really hard, and then it's really well ingrained, and the pattern matching is really, and how easy it is triggered is really profound, really, and that's the difficult part. Really, it's so established, it's so facilitated. The body part gets even bigger in your homunculus, all the adjacent areas get a bit more sensitized, and then
so everything around
you pay even more attention.
The thing that you pay attention to, everything around it is like
how but it's interesting to look at, really, because it's a bit of a chronic condition again. Huh? You get the whole lot, it focuses your attention onto the whole lot. You're like, shit, I can't exercise. No, it's not that you can't exercise, but there's some part of your exercising you have to curb down, really, and you not to do too much of it in order not to exacerbate the whole thing, really. And remember, when you exercise, you bring the blood away from your gut as well, so your gut doesn't feel very good. Exercising for IBS is not really the best thing, really, you know. Yeah. The thing, really, in a way, which is quite tricky. It's quite a tricky thing, really. And I see a lot of people who've got IBS tend to exercise quite a lot. They go to the gym and thing, really, but they don't have that when they are not at the gym, because their way of managing their stress is with exercising. It's not by actually relaxing. It's not by actually meditative. It's not actually about breathing.
It's not really managing. Well,
it's managing their emotional stress.
It's probably not managing it in a balanced fashion.
Yeah, but no. They are balancing they are getting a bit of daydreaming, and they're finding solution, and then they can rehearse the whole lot and then shelve it and things like that, really. So the whole cognitive problem is actually dealt with pretty well like that, really. But the problem is, by exercising you get the blood away from your gut, and that's not really helping for the IBS, really. And then when you eat before exercising with all the rest,
then it's really bad.
That's it. And if you exercise first thing in the morning, you're not very well hydrated, all the rest, because you spend the night, all the rest, that's it. So it's a bit of a head fuck, really.
You got to be really routine, like get a good
routine, and then get the whole lot to deal with your gut, really. And your diet is one thing, but actually breathing is really good, really. All those breathing exercises, because that's the whole thing. It's a bit like, oh, you need to do mindfulness. Mindfulness of what? To be mindful of being mindful?
Yeah. Be mindful of where I step?
Yeah, to be mindful of, or to be mindful of your little hernia, or to put more even attention. I think it's a bit of a tricky misnomer again. Yeah. It's a bit of a, and I think that's the whole stuff, really. You need to, when Jordan Peterson talks about meaning, really, you must not striving for happiness being a complete luxury, really. But
That's-
finding meaning in your life is a freaking obligation, really.
Well, he says it's a really good antidote to
Chaos.
or it is chaos, but it also says like suffering. That's it.
Suffering, yeah.
Really good antidote to suffering, and I really like that idea because I can't remember. I probably heard this from him, I'm sure, but maybe it was an idea that I came up with. I like the idea of finding meaning and that being an antidote to suffering, and potentially when you become really well versed in finding that meaning and working towards that meaning, maybe that meaning could mitigate some of the biggest pieces of suffering that trouble you, like whether that's world poverty or climate change, or whether it's your mum having MS or whatever.
That's it.
You can really find some meaning and some beautiful things, and sort of you can literally make that meaning an antidote to
everything,
to suffering directly and everything.
That's it, because of pain. Pain is the whole thing, really. That's what it's all about, really.
But the chronic thing, it's almost like so you were talking about the like pain or like IBS and my hernia and blah blah blah. So I've been thinking about this. It's almost
or my eczema.
We become really well trained or addicted to.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it's like breaking an addiction for stuff like
for focusing your mind on a whole lot.
Yeah.
And not focusing of your mind on that whole body area due to pain or discomfort or whatever, the thought that it leads to.
Yeah.
And the thought that it leads to usually is not super positive. Bizarrely.
Yeah.
It's a bit weird.
And
the thing, really.
I was reading I took one of your National Geographic magazines a couple of weeks ago on addiction.
Yeah.
And it has a picture of the brain, or like a graphic of the brain, and then has all the different parts.
Yeah.
So like talks about the dopamine coming through, blah blah blah. But it has there's 7 different areas of the brain, hotspots and stuff that are activated, and it talks there about how you remember a pastime, not only a pastime when you took this one's particular one is talking about cocaine, but I'm guessing this can be applied to everything because it's just the reward system,
That's
right?
it.
And the positive feedback loop
That's it.
that we put ourselves in when we're addicted to
That's it.
maybe a substance, but also maybe addicted to a pattern of behaviour.
Yeah. So it's talk about the memory of the whole.
Not only the memory of doing it before, but the memory of the expectation you had of doing it before. And it's like, there isn't any part that's activated that's talking about the memory of what you had after before. So it's like, it's even more important. You always talk about the positive of doing something, and then the negative of doing something, and then the positive of not doing something. So for me, with breathing or meditation, it's like, what's the positive of what's the positive of not doing meditation? What's the negative of not doing meditation? And then what's the positive of doing meditation? And it's really hard to, when you're sat down and you're busy from work and you want to chill out or make food or do whatever you've got planned, it's really hard to take time to be able to do that. And I've been meaning to write some of my biggest dragons, if you like, some of the biggest things that I want to figure out, like meditation and breathing. I've been meaning to write those down on my wall, which I still haven't done, and have those 3 columns of the positive of doing it, the negative of doing it, and then the negative, the positive
of not doing it, or vice versa.
Whichever 3 sort of supports the action that you would like to take forward, and goes against the action that you want to leave behind.
But if you figure out what is it going to give you and how is it going to help you meet your needs, because the meditation is sometimes to be on your own, so it's a bit of privacy, and that's sometimes a whole lot, really. We want to be with others, because we've been at work, we feel like we need to interact with other people, with your flatmate, all the rest and thing, really. And sometimes it's not that meaningful, because it's not interacting with others really. It's to have a meaningful relationship with others really. And you need to be able to have a level 3 or level 4 conversation really. And there's not too many people you can do that with really. So your flatmate is like, oh, it's raining today, or it's shit, or yeah, my arse is itching, and then that's it really. And that's it. It's really completely shallow conversation really. So do you think there's a value into that really? Rather than being able to have some time where you can really focus on having a bit more privacy, but focusing on your well-being as well, and the feedback you're going to have, and diminishing the sensation you have from your gut and things like that really. Which the least sensation from your gut, the least the thought process gets warped as well really. And the more you're able to see those 3 columns and focus on how bad it is to not do the whole lot, and how good it is to do it really, in order to rather than how good it is not to do it.
But then there's almost like a sea of, like, I guess, like semi-addictions, or like there's a sea of, like, it's so easy to be addicted to so many things.
Yeah.
It's not just, it's like it's not just smoking or drugs or alcohol. It's like
sports, food, relationships, buying socks, gambling, driving fast, like all the stuff, of course.
But as we said a minute ago, it's like you can be addicted to a pattern of behaviour. Like it's like Ivan Tyrrell, obviously one of the founders of Human Gibbons, talks about it really interestingly. And I listened to a interview of him talking about Godhead, his book, we both really like, and some of it's a little bit far out. He goes pretty wacky with some of the ideas that they've got. But he talks about like templates. He was like, with the pattern matching and blah blah blah, and our like evolutionary like chemicals in our body reward system that we've built. We build templates, and some of these templates might be really useful, like learning a language or instrument, or learning, how you become really competent at your job or whatever. But it can also be focusing, like getting psychotic, like I feel like I have been over the last couple of weeks, psychotic about an ailment. And then as soon as you're able to kind of, I guess, acknowledge that, and then maybe de-arouse yourself a little bit, the relief is rationalize, the relief is massive.
But that's why we talk about all those archetypal type thing really, because we are not the first humans to deal with those templates really. That's the main thing really. So like if we say in Godhead, they talk about, and in Godhead, yes, they talk about it, but you go to Lascaux or Chauvet caves in France, it's the start of that spark in the whole bloody brain really, and we become conscious of being conscious really. That's pretty massive evolutionary stuff really.
At the location?
Yeah. In the caves and thing, and then the painting, all the whole stuff about the dream.
Sure.
It's a dream, it's going in a dream and dreaming with others, and then you look at the whole lot, you look at the stalactite and it looks like a horse, and you draw it a bit to make it look, so you pattern match all the rest and things like that really. But humans have gone through having to deal with ailments all the time, because that's what
Yeah, it's just, what's the latest ailment?
That's it. But it's still the same thing.
Yeah.
We've got all those patterns in the brain that we've already all dealt with for the last 40,000 years, really. And that's the whole thing. The books, like we talk about the Bible a bit, and the Old Testament, and the pre-flood stories. We talk about the Book of Gilgamesh. We'll talk about all the whole thing with the Iliad and the Odyssey, with all those kind of stuff, the Trojan Wars, all those kind of stuff, and all the sub-stories behind it is all to do with what we've always dealt with, really. It's what we are dealing with now, in a way, really. But it's a sub-story, really. It's all the whole context, really. That's the main thing, really. And
the narrative's still the same, but the context is different.
There's nothing new.
Yeah.
It's not because you go mobile phones that it changes anything, really. It's your attention who's being drawn away from other important things, really.
That's why.
Thing.
That's
so
what
they tap on the whole lot, and you have to use your hands, which has a big stuff. You don't use your foot to. If we had to use a mobile phone with our feet, it will not be very popular, really, because we won't be too interested. It would be a freaking pain, really. But because it's our hands, because it feels good, and the whole tactile type thing, your brain gets like aroused so quick, really.
And that's the homunculus thing, right?
Homunculus,
the
that's
motor
it.
And the sensory
Part of your brain.
Because they're for our hands,
Hands
really take
ginormous, really.
Yeah,
Ginormous.
big part of the brain, right? It's all
That's
a
it.
big section of
And
the.
imagine smoking with your hand and your mouth and the oxytocin and the breath and all the rest. I think it's completely bonkers. So it's super easy to fall into the booby trap, really. But unless you know a bit what the booby trap is, but the booby trap has been there forever. It's not a new. It's not a new thing.
I was thinking
That's
this.
the thing, really.
I was thinking this the other day. Our like basic needs have never ever been met in such a I guess extravagant fashion. Not necessarily balanced, but like
potentially met.
like food. I mean, like food, water, and shelter.
Yeah.
Like those three. Like poverty has probably never ever been so low.
So low. That's it.
And it's certainly not been this low since we started recording it. And so like across the world, I've never really had to worry. You know, I've gone hungry sometimes and not been able to afford food.
Yeah.
But that's been like a day or something.
Yeah.
And so I've never actually had to worry about any of those things.
That's
Running
it.
water, we shower ourselves in it every day, basically.
You even flush the toilet with 50 liters of water for 100 cc of urine.
Yeah.
Imagine the luxury. And it's drinking water. Yeah.
It's like, it's not only filtered, it's treated water.
Exactly.
Completely absurd.
Yeah.
But I was thinking, because we don't have any of those like basic needs for ourselves or our family or our communities, we really need to we don't have the worry of them not being met.
But the main problem, the main thing is somebody is helping you to meet them. You haven't had to meet them yourself.
So is it the act that we haven't had to meet it ourselves?
That's it.
Is it
so it's not really helping you to actually meet the other needs yourself. Because that's the thing, really. Somebody is managing the water, and we don't have to think about it, and you just have to turn the tap. You don't have to you don't have to dig the freaking well, you don't have to wheel the whole lot up and down, and contend with the other people who use it, all those kind of things, really, okay? And then the drought, and then the whole lot, and thing, really. So that would be need met, and that's the thing. But nowadays, you don't have to actually do it. You have to. There's somebody doing it for you.
But that's my point.
And that's difficult because that's not really helping you to have to deal with it yourself. And all the other needs that, not the shelter, the warmth, and the food, and all those kind of stuff, but all the emotional needs. Then you think somebody else is gonna deal with them for you, really.
Well, yeah,
and you're not very well trained. It's not helping you to actually meet that yourself, really. That's the main problem, really.
That's my point, because I think lots of the basic things like hunting, for example, you got a constant reassurance or a reminder of your competence in hunting, because or your competence in your role within the hunting, or food, or the community within itself based around food, because you had to. And then you got a reminder of like control, community, I guess competence.
Meaningful relationship with others. You have to be quiet. If you want to go hunting with me, we know that we might actually die.
Yeah, attention as well.
You need to pay freaking
so
attention.
your emotional needs got met in a balanced fashion because our basic needs required so much of our emotional needs. And so what I was thinking the other day was, now that all of those basic needs, I'm talking shelter, food, water, we never have to think of them basically. And so many people have mental illness or unfulfillment or anxiety or something of some sort. So I basically don't know anyone who hasn't experienced it at some point. Now we're having to really understand how we can get those emotional needs met in a balanced fashion. Do you think that it's going to take us to like quite an interesting space in, let's say, 100 or maybe even less than 100 years?
Yeah, I'm not too sure really, because it feels like it's been done and doing again and doing again and doing again. I don't think we are as evolved as we could be in that level.
Yeah,
and myself first. I will put myself first on the list of that really. I feel like I'm rehearsing some of the patterns that have been rehearsed by people before me many times, and there's been I haven't been able to have that passed on from me really clearly. My parents passed on certain things for me, maybe of taking responsibility and making the decision and certain choices and dealing with the consequences of it quite earlier on really. But they haven't really talked to me and articulated it in a quite that well fashioned in a way, and to look at the sub story a little bit, I've not really been trained to do that really. But if I maybe can train my kids to actually do it, they'll be doing it from their adolescence or late childhood really. And then they can when they start to understand after the age of 7 or 8, when you start to reason a little bit and you're able to empathize with others and look at and you understand a bit, you're sad, daddy, or something like that. A 5-year-old doesn't ask you whether you're sad really. He doesn't even compute really. He's not interested really. He's sad, and the whole world should be sad because he's sad. That's the thing really. But when you're 7, you realize that you're sad, and it doesn't mean that the others can be sad. Some others are going to be quite actually happy for you to be sad. Anyway, that's another story. But we have not evolved one bit, and I think we're pretty backwards.
Yeah,
and people are so poorly equipped with those kind of stuff, and maybe from some of the basic needs not having to be met really, and some of the basic needs being met, or you're helped by others to meet those basic needs, and that's a bit the whole thing really. It makes you a bit complacent, maybe. Complacent, yeah.
Complacent, yeah. Yeah, it's like we've got too much served to us on a plate.
Yeah. That
it's almost like we don't know what to pay attention to.
Yeah.
It's like people just watch stuff, eat stuff. Food's another really interesting addiction, which is obviously massively like our templates or our templates for like the reward system was largely based around, like it would have been largely based around food, and that's super interesting now, because I never really thought about that before. A, because I didn't believe in evolution, and B, when I did believe in evolution, I then didn't know about this till relatively recently. And it's like we needed to get food and supply food for ourselves and our loved ones and community, blah blah blah. And so the reward was really, really high. And I read something ages ago by a nutritionist or biologist called Dr. Rhonda Patrick, and she was talking about how it looks like there's like lots of studies, or a handful of studies, that quite strongly suggest that when we eat food in a large group, and we like, the whole thing of breaking the bread and blah blah blah, in a big group community of people, your body is way more likely to take in the nutrients. It's not like you're less likely to have irritation, etc. And so like our bodies are like these perfect machines to evolve to our state now. And now everything that's got us to this stage, because we only live in a short window and history's really warped, and even your stories from your dad or whatever, or his versions of the stories, now we're just like, okay, now just getting my next gratification, my next thing. It's really interesting. It makes a lot of sense. And I've been reading and listening to quite a bit of Graham Hancock recently about like Egyptians. He's got a new book out which I haven't read yet, but I've heard him talk about it, and he is so certain that not only it feels like we always act as if we're really, really evolved, and we're almost quite arrogant about the past, I think, in lots of ways. And generally, it's like most people agree that, you know, it's 2,000 years ago-ish that since Jesus, and that he was a real person, regardless of what you think he was. But Graham Hancock's like, you know, with all the Egyptian stuff, and now his focus has been on the Americas, and how they've really not been well researched at all, because archaeologists never went further back than 1,000 or 2,000 years or something. And he's like absolutely certain that not only was there a civilization before where we thought there was a civilization, and there was a cataclysm that wiped them out, but he actually thinks that they were as far evolved as we were potentially in like the 18th, maybe 19th century, which is really recent. It's like if that's the case, because they found like screws and stuff like that, like in really, really deep in rocks, and it's all very interesting.
I'm not too sure. I think the whole, you know, I was talking to you about the heliacal rising of Sotis, which is like Sirius, the dog star, the brightest star in the constellation of Canis Major, which is just on the southwest of Orion, tend to rise at the same time as the sun when the flood of the Nile occurs. And somehow there's, with the precession of the earth and the wobble of the earth and all those kind of things, it seems to be that there's a 1,200-year cycle to it, okay, to the phenomenon. And in Saqqara, that's the stepped pyramid in Egypt, is written in hieroglyph that the whole heliacal rising of Sotis happens at that. It coincides with the flood and the whole fertilizing of the Nile Delta, and all the silt is being deposited and all those kind of stuff, and it has a 1,200-year cycle. So that's 3,000 years before Christ that it's written down, but there's a 1,200-year cycle then. So for you to be able to know there's a 1,200-year cycle, you need to have looked at it at least 3 times. Let's say, if we were to be conservative, maybe 5 in a way, really, to be really quite sure, really, that it's definitely a cycle.
Really,
in a way. And then, so if we were saying 5, it would be 6,000 years. If we say there's 20 years per generation, that's a good 300 generation. Okay, so you got 300 generation of people who actually were looking at the stars and correlating certain astronomical events with something happening in the world, in a way, and they were able to correlate it and see that it was a bit changing at different time of the year, and able to pick up that there was a 1,200-year cycle after having watched it for quite a while. So, the fact that there's a civilization before, and people were quite evolved, and they were able to make those kind of observation, and the relevance of it for them was pretty high, really. And they had to have an oral, because we don't think, well, as far as like, I don't know, the archaeological finds go, I think all the writing and the cuneiform in Mesopotamia is maybe the start of it a little bit, really. So the first cities are 10,000 years old, roughly, more or less, something like that, really. You see what I mean, really? In the last glaciation, all the rest and things. So the whole modern history we have here in Middle East and Egyptian area, Turkey, all the agricultural change and all those kind of stuff happens 10,000 years ago. Yeah, great, but there was something before, and people were interacting in a quite interesting fashion before, because we had that metaphorical way of looking at things all 30 or 40,000 years ago, really. So
you could tell that from the hieroglyphs.
But no, from that story, really, the guy writes down there's a 1,200-year cycle, 3,000 years before Christ. That's what he writes down. So it's a common knowledge, and it's important enough because it's a flood, and it's actually bringing life to the bloody country in a way, because there's been desertification all over the North African place in that after the post-glaciation area. It used to be a savanna. If you go to the Tibesti, for example, it's like mountains in the north of Africa. Or mountains, or mountainous region in the north of Africa. There's cave paintings, and there's alligators, there's giraffes, there's rhinos, there's all the whole lot of African things, but it's a freaking desert, really. There's no more than anything. So I'm pretty sure it was a hunting ground for a lot of people, and all of a sudden, everybody from climate change pressure and that post-glaciation type of area, they were pushed towards somewhere where there was a bit more certainty, a bit more consistency. And I think the Nile Delta was one place, and the Nile Delta was giving life or death. If you didn't know when the flood was coming and your hut was there, you would not fend very well, really. So you needed to know whether it was happening or not, really. And you need to, if you were planting things or hunting, all those kind of stuff, you had to do it, really. And the whole guy talks about that, and when it happens, and correlates it with an astronomical event, and talks about the fact that there's a 1200-year cycle then. So 1200-year cycle, you need another at least 3600 years before that, really. To even have started the world. So I think we could say if we put another 2,500 years, it's not too out of whack, really. So another 6,000 years, so that's like a good 10,000 years ago. The guys that were starting, and after they talked, I don't know, maybe they were writing, and maybe they were writing on in the air or something like that, and then we haven't got no trace of it, really. But that's pretty evolved way of thinking, really.
Yeah, well, some of the Great Pyramid and Pyramid, what's the one that is it called Pyramid B or something?
Yeah, Khufu.
And then the third one, the alignment of those is like Orion's belt, and then they always thought that the Sphinx pointed to the Taurus.
Yeah.
Right, but Graham Hancock, this was like an old thing. I didn't really know much about the Egyptians.
Because when you look at the belt of Orion, there's a Pleiades, and behind the Pleiades, because Orion is in love with the Pleiades, or one of the Pleiades, whatever. And then the Pleiades is the Taurus, who's in between the two of them, really. So he's with his club, and he's going to want to whack.
I thought it was something to do with Leo and the
Leo is
alignment
on the
of Leo on the Sphinx. On that point of the Sphinx would have been like 12,000 years ago or something.
Yeah. Scorpio and things. So
pretty crazy.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy, but I think people were observing things, they were pattern matching, they were making a metaphorical representation, they were looking at the way the stars were aligning and how it was working with the moon and the sun a long time ago, and they were looking at cycles because they were farming and they were doing all sorts of things, really, and it was really important. It was life and death, really, and they were starting to notice. Who noticed? How do you notice those things? How do you note it? How do you record it? How do you go about knowing, really? That's the whole thing, really. How do you know about how to make a Stonehenge? How do you know how to make... Where does it come from? That's the whole lot, really. So
why?
And why do you want to do it, really? Yeah. But, that's another story. There's very interesting theories behind that, really. But you're in a certain way of thinking, you use your right brain, you're a hunter-gatherer, your characteristics, there's no properties, there's no sense of work or thing like that, really, as such, really. You don't reward people with money, all those kind of stuff, you barter, all those kind of stuff. It's a very matriarchal, driven society, and it's that right brain that dominates, really.
Whereas now, would you say it is more patriarchal so far as not men being dominant, just the male side, the left side of the brain?
Left brain, yeah, that's it. It's left brain dominant. Yeah. Patriarchal or matriarchal is a bit overrated. I think it was a right brain dominated. Men and women were mostly into their right brain.
Back then. And now
they're mostly into their left brain. That's the whole thing. On a bell curve. in a way. So it's a bit more calculated, it's a bit more sequential, it's a bit more callous, it's a bit like less emotion, it's a bit less, less colorful, less imaginative. There's a bit more, there's property, there's a value to things, a monetary value, all those kind of stuff. There's laws, there's things that you obey to, all those kind of stuff, really. So the transition, imagine talking to somebody whose life is ruled by his right brain and is interacting with his environment with his right brain. But if you do that and you sedentarize, you have to wait for your crop. It's the middle of winter, because for your crop next year you have to keep some grain. And if the crop was not very good, what do?
Starve or don't eat next year.
Starve or don't eat next year. That's I will have this one as well. This one doesn't go in the ground and doesn't give you 10 of those, really. And imagine you meet with somebody who's a hunter-gatherer. He doesn't have to store anything, he doesn't have to stay in the same place, he sees the stuff very differently, his world is completely ruled differently, really. We talk about extraterrestrials, but I think that's pretty much as far as it goes to being a complete UFO, really.
What, hunter-gatherer?
Oh yeah, compared to a guy who's sedentarized, really. How do you get a hunter-gatherer to actually sedentarize? So, you were talking about Goldblick Blake. I can't remember the name. I can't even pronounce it.
Göbekli Tepe.
Yeah, that's it. In Turkey.
Yeah.
That thing, and that's maybe been actually a temple that has been built by hunter-gatherers.
Yeah,
and it was not sedentarized.
How do they know that? Why do they think it's hunter-gatherers?
Because there's no permanent settlement around it.
Maybe there was, but it's made out of wood.
Oh no, because wood, you need to put it in the ground, you need to make holes in the ground, and when the wood rots, the whole hole stays, and then you can tell it, because it was like henges in around Stonehenge, which predate from Stonehenge. There's a very good program nowadays on the BBC about that. And then they look at the wall further, or reaches a little bit, and where it starts, and some of the clearing for hunting, all those kind of stuff, a bit, really. So they are hunter-gatherers then, really. They don't really breach too much the subject of that, really. But you got hunter-gatherers who put it together, really. And they make a permanent thing. A permanent structure, really, which is a bit, maybe quite evolved in their way of looking at the world. Because
like a Mecca, right?
Like a pilgrimage.
Because if they're not there all the time, because they're hunter-gatherers on the move, then it would suggest that maybe they
come at a certain time of the year, or those kind of stuff and things, really.
I still kind of feel like that's a big leap, saying just because there's certain ways that we measure whether people set up a community there. Like maybe there's other, maybe there's other explanations. But
just as far as when we look at other places and we see more permanent settlement around those kind of stuff and the rituals that happen, all those kind of stuff, we know that Stonehenge is the middle of the winter ceremonial place. Oh, how do we know? Because there's loads of little piglets that have been killed. And the little piglets are born the previous year, really. That's the thing, really. So we sacrifice some of the pigs that were born that year. That's it, really. And then you can see that in the bones of the piglets, really. That's the whole lot, really. And you sacrifice your best part at the time where it's the most, you're at the middle of the time where you're most restrained in terms of the amount of food you have, really.
Yeah. So you make the biggest sacrifice when you need it the most.
When you need that thing the most.
Yeah.
Yeah. You sacrifice it when you need it the most.
Yeah. Interesting.
In order to, because you believe in a whole lot, you think that there is going to be a better time ahead of you, really.
Well, there seems to be, if you're going left brain and business about it, there seems to be a positive return on investment when you make a big sacrifice.
Yeah.
But
it rewards you as well. all the whole lot,
of course,
it's part of the community, so you meet quite a lot of your needs like that, all those kind of stuff, really. But if your guy thinks there was a civilization before all that, of course, there were people sharing really meaningful information and relevant information for 5,000-6,000 years before the whole stuff was written in Saqqara about the heliacal rising of Sotis. Somebody knew about that way back. For somebody 3,000 years ago to say, and by the way, there's a 1,200 year cycle to it.
I've just remembered that that's pretty widely accepted by archaeologists now. I think that the pyramids predate what they originally thought, which is like, I think it was like 2000 BC or something.
Oh yeah,
it's a bit more. Or more. But they all say, I think they found something or dated something, I can't remember what, that took it back to 1200, 500 BC. Yeah. It's because I've only just started reading Fingerprints of the Gods, which is his, I think his first book on this kind of stuff. And he's obviously talking about it in there. And back in 1995, when he released the book, that was quite big information, and he got slated massively by archaeologists. But I think since then, it's quite widely accepted. But what he was talking about was that he thinks ancient civilizations weren't just in that area of the world. We need to look in the Americas. And is it LiDAR? I think there's like do you know LiDAR? It's like I can't remember what technology it is, but it's similar to radar from the sky. And I think they found some crazy stuff underneath the Amazon rainforest and stuff. Yeah. And he was like, it's just interesting. There's like big gaps in my history knowledge, because at school I always, basically anything that suggested going back further than like 5,000 years or whatever, I was like, nope, not possible, because I only thought the Earth was like 8 or 9 or 10,000 years old.
But the idea of Earth, that it is the way it is now in our head, is possibly not much older than that. That's the whole thing, really.
What do you mean?
The concept we have of what the Earth is, in a way, with the Garden of Eden, with the knowledge, with all the whole flood, all those kind of stuff, is maybe not such a long time ago where that idea of an Earth like that is, really. So it's not really far-fetched to think that the Earth, the way we think it and the way we can conceptualize it, is not very old, of course, really. Yes, of course, geologically speaking, it's a few more billion years, really. It's all fine, really. That doesn't really exclude the fact that some kind of idea of the Earth and the way we sit in the Earth and how we interact with what's in the Earth and how it's been put for us maybe to enjoy, or we think it is for us to have dominion over, and all those kind of stuff, is a quite very recent way of thinking, and maybe not much further than 10,000 years ago, a bit more maybe, but it's, I mean, really. So
but maybe it isn't, because if you think that the Earth is that young or 10,000 years old, this is what I was thinking about with the Americas thing, because I didn't really know much about the real story to do with the Native Americans and stuff like that, and
the Incas, the Olmecs, the Toltecs,
and the Aztecs and things like that, and it's like that got me thinking even more, because it's like we're so stuck in our immediate surroundings, and I mean that just actual surroundings, or like physical surroundings, but also like our time surroundings. So like, what have I got on next week, or what happened a week ago, or what was my last birthday like, or what was my next birthday like. And the idea of, we spoke before about how I'd love to own some land, but then the idea of owning something is like, it's a little bit funny, but it's like people in America and like Trump and those people who are like, make it America great again, that's really awesome, and I'm not saying that that's a bad thing at all. It's probably got loads of benefit, but it's like, you need to kind of keep it in mind of like, this is only borrowed. Like, people love their grandchildren, but their grandchildren's grandchildren, it's going to be a very, very, very different world. And I think, and like they're going to own the land or they're going to rent the land at that point in their life.
Yeah.
And the idea of us, it being like, this is my patch of earth. I'm very pro Wiltshire, and I can't believe I'm sat in Gloucestershire at the moment talking to you. And it's like, I think it is quite important in some ways to be like, if you do believe the Earth's 10,000 years old, then hopefully that is long enough.
I'm talking about the concept of.
I know you are, but the concept of it being longer is like,
or 40,000 years old.
This actual land would have been probably, definitely very, very different. Topologically, it would have been pretty different, like 20,000 years ago.
Yeah.
But go back a million years, or two, or a billion. It's like this could have been, this. These bits of atoms might have been hot, molten, whatever, and spent all that time coming to the surface. It's like everything is very fragile, and being really certain about about your ideas based on your like group label, based on your Wiltshire or UK or something it's so ridiculous.
I think the whole historical and archaeological way of doing is there's a certain way of doing it. That's the main thing, really. It's a bit like physics, there's a certain way of doing it. It's a bit like chemistry, there's a certain way of doing it. There's laws in the law, and that's a certain axiom you can't really go around with. So with the amount of digs, and the amount of information we've got and the way we've looked at it at this stage, we can say that writing has started 10,000 years ago, or first city in Jericho was like there's been loads of information there. And then the way in Stonehenge we found artifacts from Germany, from North Africa, in Stonehenge. So people were coming all the way to Stonehenge from Germany.
Back then.
In order to, we don't know what, a healing place, or a place to die, or to meet other people, or to exchange things. So there was so much more communication between people, there was so much more movement of people, there was so much more meaning into things, really. You were like this, there's a bit more to it, and the exchange of people, and the migration of people, all those kind of stuff, really. But as far as research is concerned, we think the way the humans have actually colonized the Earth, the last places on Earth to be colonized would be New Zealand, and it was 1,000 years ago. That's it, really. The Maoris, after the Maoris, I've got another way of looking, because it was the Morioris possibly before them, and they came in and they ate them a little away. There was like moas, there were giant eagles, there was like some really strange creatures, like a megafauna a little bit, like the giant sloth and a saber-toothed lion. Some of the first humans coming to North America, they had to contend with those animals, really. Like some really strange creatures, really, monsters and all those kind of stuff, really. So it's a bit in that common, whales, like I went to the Natural History Museum at the weekend, and there's a model of a blue whale from 1938. So the model of the blue whale is in cardboard and plywood and all those kind of stuff. It's 1938, so it's quite old. It's a good 80-year-old model. But the problem is they had never seen it in water. They didn't know how it looked and how streamlined it is. So actually, it's not really modeled in a proper fashion, really.
It's a little bit inaccurate.
It's a little bit inaccurate in a way, really. So we are all a bit, the fact that there was a civilization beforehand and things like that, why not, really? And they might have been pretty evolved in a way, and we've lost all that. We saw in the Dark Ages here how Islam had taken over the whole had started to translate all the Greek philosophers, the mathematics, algebra. Algebra is called algebra because it's a Muslim, it's an Arabic word, really. All the calculus, all the different trigonometry, all Pythagore, all those kind of stuff, it's really from then. And all the ways they were designing, all the caravanserai, how they were doing their mosaics, how they were, like the whole stuff, really, like stained glass, all the rest, all those kind of stuff. And then we came along in 1000 year, in the year 900 and the first crusade, I can't even exactly remember, 980 or something like that. And we want to take back Jerusalem from the infidels, and then we come across all that knowledge, really, who's been translated from Greek into Arabic, really. And then what do? We do a big, massive revolution in architecture, and we go from Roman to Gothic architecture. We bring light into our place of cult. We bring all the buttresses, all the walls. The walls were much thinner, massive windows. You need to stain the glass. How do you know about staining glass before that? We got no freaking clue. We take the knowledge back from all the alchemists and all the chemists and all the stuff that the Arabs had done, because it was their golden age of they were in their like it was in art and poetry and clothing and all the rest. They were like, it was massive, really, and we were a bunch of minions, really, at the time in Europe, really. And then we bring all that, and then it goes in a place of cult. You go to Salisbury Cathedral, or you go to Lincoln Cathedral, or you go to Paris Notre Dame, all those kind of stuff. They are object of that age, and they are byproduct of translation from Greek into Arabic.
So we're already doing, or have already done, what ancient civilizations did before us, of course.
It's just repeating. Yeah. History is just repeating, and we are none the wiser. There's not that much people who are actually very enlightened and who are very good at meeting all their needs and are very able to actually articulate the whole shenanigan and have much meaning, really. Who was the Crusades? If it all the way Europe was put together, it was very feudal. There was little lords, and they were beating the shit of each other just to get in the knickers of one girl and to give him a few sons in order to be able for him to inherit the whole lot, the patch of land. There, it was just like completely like it was bonkers, really. And then all of a sudden, the clergy thinks, we're going to try to unify all that. Let's give them a bit of a higher purpose and send them to bloody conquer and free the promised land and the Jerusalem and the celestial Jerusalem and whatever, really. Who cares? And then they made them do something, really, and they came back changed, and all the whole stuff evolved, and then you got like all the light, you got all of that after that, really. It takes astronomical instruments, astrolabes, all the counting of time, all those kind of stuff. In his castle, Henry, like Louis Capet, he was doing, I'm not sure even what he was doing to keep the time, really. It was like, oh, well, it's daytime. Shit, let's get pissed again. And we've not raped too many women lately. Let's go on a rampage. Like it was like, wow, great. That's great, brilliant. So yeah, it's still the same, and there's no. Whereas with our technology, and we still have to contend with the whole stuff again, really. What is it we're going to do with it? And how a minority is doing quite a lot out of it compared to a majority who's actually just minions, really.
That's kind of what I was
really
talking about, or
inferring.
Yeah, when I was first talking about our basic needs being like exceeded in a ridiculous fashion, and it's almost, I feel like it is going to force us, like absolutely force us to focus on like what is fulfillment, or what is, we talk about the emotional needs, and maybe there's other models out there that don't talk about emotional needs or whatever. I don't know, but
Because that's the way you're inclined, Elliot. But some people, when they start to think about it, they start to freak out. Their pelvic floor start to vibrate, and then they put their head in the sand, and they start to sing la 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 because they don't want to hear it. Really, it's too complicated for some people, really, and they don't.
Yeah, but that's because it is complicated. I was talking to my friend
Is it complicated?
from Norway last night because I was supposed to go recently and then didn't, and then I'm going actually to his wedding in August, and he called me out of the blue, and like anyone who talks to me at the moment, they like ask me what I'm doing, and then I just go in on what we've been talking about, and that's kind of why I love it so much, because I think it's like the human givens and us talking about pain and things, because our own shit, our own lives are really so individual, like too individual in some ways. Like my I've got hernia, I've got this, and I've got blah blah blah.
That's it. The story exactly. Is different.
The context.
The context
is
no the content. The content.
Is
different.
So anyway, the
context is the same.
The story, our lives are so unbelievably unique.
Yeah.
But the human givens framework is so rigid and so like it's so. I was saying to him, it's like I was trying to explain it, but it's like our lives, our uniqueness in how we've been able to play with these symphony of emotional needs is so unbelievably unique. There may never be another person who has that same thing on this planet, but we can place that on this framework, and it works really well. And the reason why I like that is because it's so chaotic. Like life itself is so chaotic, like in so many ways, which is why there's so much uniqueness in each individual person's suffering.
It's called creativity.
The amazing order of these 10 needs being so stable is amazing. Whereas when you read any self-help book, and I've read like basically every major one, I've read them and more. Or you read like an entrepreneur story, because a lot of people, I find most people gravitate to those because they're usually like rags to riches, or having a really hard time and then blah blah blah, and they've succeeded in whatever way. And so those two, or people overcoming adversity with like cancer and things like that, you try to find meaning in those things, and it's really difficult because you have got a framework there. I believe like if you read those books and you use the human givens framework, you could say, oh, okay, then that's her confronting like her control issues or her competence issues and blah blah blah. But they don't ever talk. No one knows. They don't realize that framework. So they don't talk about it. So it's just the context and the content, which is really emotional. So it's really chaotic. So it becomes, why wouldn't people bury their head in the sand? Because it's like, well, no one knows what's wrong with me. And like I said last time on our podcast,
that's the main problem.
But
nobody knows.
Like I said last time,
but we don't give a fuck nobody knows.
It's still,
you don't know, and that's the main problem.
People just don't know. People just don't. Hopefully, I would love for one person to listen to us chatting away and realise that it's like, maybe if they start doing shit about their shit and owning all of it and just being like, well, I deserve everything that I get. And that can be good or bad. I'm going to try to make it more good than bad.
What do you do out of it?
But people don't know that in general. People don't know that in general because there's such a wash of, it's almost like chaotic, like emotion around mental health.
And noise in the background, because somebody must be there to help you to deal with it, really. You got rights. You got rights. I've got my rights. I know my rights. Great.
Cool.
Brilliant. And?
I hope that works out for you.
That's it. How well is it working for you, actually? Pretty shit. So fulfill a few obligations, and then you'll get... The rights will not even need to be there, because they will happen as a de facto thing, really. So it's a heuristic way of looking at it again. You make a shortcut, really. I've got rights. Hold on. Yeah, cool. Fulfill a few obligations as well. You got loads of obligations. And then once you fulfill the obligation, the rights, you don't really matter. You don't really need the rights.
But it even gets even more complicated than that, because it's like fulfill a few obligations, then people think that they need to fill certain obligations, but they don't, and then people lie to themselves about what's important.
Yeah, good. It's no problem. As long as you try.
I guess so, yeah.
As long as it's an experiment. Yeah. That's the whole date, really. Yeah, don't believe what everything tells you. Try to do it yourself, really. And then come back to the whole stuff when you've hit your face on the floor a few times. After a while, you're a bit like, okay, yeah, great. Okay, I'll do it like that then. Because it's been done before. That's the thing, really. When your dad says, don't do that, it's gonna really hurt. It's like, wow, fuck it. He's complete moron. You're a moron. I need to do my own experiences. Yeah, it was really painful. Yeah, no shit. I think somebody's done it before, and I think that's the arrogance of all of us. Really, we're all a bit arrogant. But there's that background archetypal stuff that is coming from just before it's antediluvian. It's from the it's
antediluvian.
Yeah, prior to the flood. Antediluvian. Antediluvian, actually, it's not it's antediluvian. Prior to the flood. So it's long time ago, whenever the flood was.
And what was that? I was focusing on the word, I forgot what you were saying.
That all those patterns of behavior are, and the way we go about doing it, is been done before.
Mm.
Yes, by your dad, by your granddad, but by your great grandparents as well.
Yeah.
And it will be done by your great grandson.
And it's also been fucked up by your great grandmother or granddad or great uncle as well. Like everyone's done it. It's all the same. They fucked it up. Some of them might have, figured it out better than others.
Yeah.
But everyone fucked it up and then got better and then fucked up again and then got a little bit better.
Yeah. But there's lots of scripture where it looks like some people have figured it out not too badly. And they've had a framework that was working quite well, really.
Yeah, but
if you don't have the framework that doesn't work quite well, you can be innocent. Let's be innocent. I mean, let's be minions and then just focus on really the bare necessity, and as soon as it gets complicated, let's bury our head, and then it works quite well, really. I'm oppressed, but it's normal because I'm not very good and I don't really understand things very well, and I'm not very intelligent, and I'm not very much and then it's normal. I'm a bit like that. It's like
Yeah, I was as I was leaving work today, there's like a new lady or newish lady, she's been there for a couple of months, I got on really well with. She's the one whose friend went to America to that chronic illness.
Yeah.
And she was like, I hope the doctors and stuff goes well tomorrow, and I hope they sort it out or whatever. And she was like, it's so annoying because you look after yourself quite well. And I was like, well, no, not really. And she was like, well, you do. And I was like, no, not really. And it was like, no one really, like, I basically don't know anyone who looks after themselves well.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, yeah, everyone has some shit, something, some comfort, some emotional crutch that they're holding on to that's allowing them to be a little bit more free, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And stress
who makes them feel, or they make them think that they're actually a bit more free, but actually they're not.
Yeah, but that's why it's stopping an emotional crutch that's stopping them from being a bit more free.
Stop them. Yeah.
So it's like the whole like freer will and
hinder the whole lot a bit.
Yeah.
No. It's just that the beauty of it really is archetypal. It's been done before. Let's not beat our, it's all fine. It's just like, I think it's just how is it we can pass on the whole knowledge for the next 300 generations. Like the Heliacal rising of Sotis, some people were there and they were passing on that knowledge from one generation to the next, and the meaning of it, and the value of knowing the whole lot, and the skill to actually observe the whole thing in order to pass it on to somebody else, the next generation, and to carry on the whole lot, and for it not to be distorted and to stay true to itself. That's the whole stuff, so it's possible, really. information has been passed on orally for we say 300 generations, but yeah, in that instance, before the whole stuff is written in stone, really. That's it.
Yeah, and I think that's quite an interesting part about like social media, because there's potential for us to really use it well.
Yeah.
Like we could really, and people are.
Yeah.
People are, being inspirational and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But I think there's a little bit of a lack of direction in some places.
Yeah. What is the meaning? And what, and I think once you've your mission is to try to meet your needs in a bit of a better fashion, that's already maybe a bit of a lifetime or lifelong process.
Yeah.
And is it giving you that much meaning, really? Because there's still the meaning in your life to actually find, really. But you're not going to be able to think it straight and have the headspace until those needs are a bit met in a balanced fashion in order to really find the true meaning of your life, not somebody else's meaning.
Mm.
Oh, well, yeah.
Or what you think someone else thinks your meaning is.
Oh, well, that's even more. Yeah.
That's what I get caught up on all the time.
Yeah.
It's like it's impossible for me to go a day without thinking about doing something because of in a certain way, because of what other people think about me. Yeah. And I know that's meaning on a very, very micro scale.
Yeah,
we're talking about macro a little bit more, but it's like those little micro things, you can get lost in 10 of those, then all of a sudden your macro goal for the day is gone. Yeah, it's very interesting. And if those guys, girls, kids, whatever else, maybe animals, I don't know, or whatever, gods wrote that there was like a 1200 year cycle for future generations.
Yeah.
It's like now most people are like, or like I certainly was when I first started trying to figure myself out a little bit more, was like, I'm going to be done in like 2 months' time and I'm going to get that girl back. And then 2 months went by and I was like, well, I think I'm in an even worse place than I was 2 months ago. And then 18 months later, blah, blah, blah. It's like we want to figure ourselves out so we can go be a rock star or go start that business or go get that girl or go get that guy or whatever now. But it's like if you can figure out how to release that pressure from yourself and just be like, right, maybe I can find meaning in my life, and my life mission could just be to try and find some meaning and get my emotional needs met in a balanced fashion. Now that there's a bit more of a better framework, like whether it's the Human Gibbons or another framework or whatever, and then potentially have kids, because it is quite a natural thing for us. Obviously, it's a very natural thing for us to do. Some might say the most, and potentially try and pass down that information. That
so you don't
knowledge
have to have kids to pass that on.
No, not at all.
You talk to people, you talk to new people, you can educate, you can have a following, people listen to you.
And there's that old idea of children being raised by a village, not by their parents,
Oh yeah.
Children are raised by a community, or should be.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, let's not talk about parenting tonight. Otherwise, the whole thing is gonna start to take a very different thing. It's gonna take a very different turn. Yeah. No, the main problem with that is you need to be able to put your needs second if you're a parent. And the main problem is, as parents, if you haven't met all your needs in a balanced fashion and you're not very good at meeting your needs in a very balanced fashion, in light of a changing environment, well, you end up putting your needs first, and therefore your kid has to put his needs second. And therefore your kid is becoming the parent, and the parent is becoming the kid. And that's a very big problem. And it's something I struggle an awful lot about, trying to give attention to my kids.
How do you keep yourself in check with things like that?
Because you got a framework.
What is your framework?
The Human Gibbons.
Yeah, but how do you check? How do you recalibrate yourself?
Don't worry, kids are very good at telling you, Daddy, you're on your phone again. That's pretty much when you're in check.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
you could very easily be like,
Because-
but it's business. I need to be on my phone.
Yeah, that's it. You can say that, if you want,
Yeah, but that's
Because you think that your business is more important than the wallet, but actually at that particular time you got another time to actually do the wallet, and then you do it a couple of times, and then you realize, and then your kids, my kids are not paying attention to me now. Oh yeah.
how dare they choose when to
That's
pay
it.
me attention.
Exactly. And then so you're in check all the time. The kids are very good at actually mirroring the whole lot, really. And then if you're a little bit astute with the whole way, all of a sudden you get rid of the technology, and then you really try to be with them, really, a little bit, really, for it's attention, a little bit, really. And after you, they ask you questions, they do bits and bobs a bit, and then they come and sit on your lap when you're in the toilet, all those kind of stuff. So like trying to get on your own in the toilet is not an option anyways. You can get rid of the door, actually. You can put the bug in the middle of the lounge. It's as good as is when you got kids, really, because they take completely your privacy. And if it's one way of getting your privacy, you're buggered, really. So they are really good at doing the whole lot, really.
But surely there must be like something that you do or are planning to do.
Because there's my wife as well. So there's two of us already who already do it a bit differently, and hopefully we've got different needs that we need to meet a little bit in a different fashion, and we've got a different creativity about doing it, and we've got two kids, and therefore the kids are at different stage in their emotional and intellectual evolution, and the whole thing bounces a bit like that, and then that's kept in check a little. And if you got an overarching framework, it's quite an interesting thing, really, and the more you do it, the better you are at doing it, because it's like flexing muscle. It's like going to the gym, really.
Yeah.
It's like you talk about functional patterns and extending your neck to do deadlifts. Yeah, great. Well, you need to train and you need to do it, really. In a way, you need to do that with children. It's really good.
It's like getting, as Ivan Tyrell talks about, getting those templates. It's like getting a new template. You need to keep practicing it. So that it is a template.
In order to be good at doing it, really.
Yeah.
And practice makes perfect. And we know, and rehearsing the whole lot, and you cannot change the template to a new one until your dopamine level is quite is focusing itself on the new template, and you decrease the amount of dopamine you put on the old template, and then that's it, really. But it's
so simple.
It is actually pretty simple. And the whole framework is actually helping you to actually go about it in a bit more easy fashion. It's not to say that it's easy to achieve, but once you've cracked quite a lot of the whole lot, I think and you make a gymnastic of it, I think it's pretty interesting, really. But if you start at 15, you don't have too many templates. And therefore, you're quite good at doing the templates, really. When you're 70 and you have to change the templates, I can tell you there's far too much history about doing the whole lot, really. And when you do it at 40, well, you're a bit halfway between, really, in a way, really. So, because the younger you are, the more easy it is to apply to shift template and see a little bit, really. If you take into account others before you who've fucked up by doing the thing, really. Your granddad was an alcoholic and he ended up dead in a bloody gutter. Okay, great. Well, we can all carry on drinking, really. At least we know what how it ended up with granddad, really. That's a bit the whole stuff, really. But we tend to. And then we carry on. Type thing, really.
How much do... so if there's like... you talk at times about like autonomic, like autoimmune, like response to something.
Yeah.
And so I had asthma when I was young, and I'm guessing I still have it now because I still get short of breath and blah blah blah. And just so happens that if I sit down and do some big breathing and try and sort of get myself in a different state, all of a sudden my breath gets really quite good. And I first noticed how bad it was when I first started running again for the marathon, because I quit smoking and I was like, my breath is way worse. And I don't know if you remember me talking to you, but I was eating a lot of peanuts at that time, and I was like, peanuts are really high in histamine. So it's like, well, I should stop eating them. I didn't realize that they were high in histamine. And you're like, histamine's good, like it's a good thing to have in small amounts in nuts. So don't go eating loads, but it's probably down to the arousal, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, I digress, but it's like, my dad had asthma, and he was very much like from when I was really young and I wasn't diagnosed with it, and the doctors wouldn't diagnose me with it. He was like, he definitely has asthma. I know he does.
Yeah.
How much? I don't know if asthma has a link genetically, but I'm guessing, like officially or as far as science, but I'm guessing it probably does have something.
Yeah.
It's like, how much to, like, how do I word this? How much? Like, what's the link between expectations and some autoimmune, or maybe all autoimmune diseases? Because it's like, it seems like we rehearse a template, whether that template is essentially rehearsing or getting stressed about something, and maybe that stress
whether it's actually leading us to be freer or healthier or better, or however we want to put it. The outcome of that template you think that it might have worked at one stage, but now it doesn't. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah,
that's how it goes.
But then you get an autoimmune response, almost like.
But we talked about the cortisol and the DHEA, and we talked about the fact that the longer you sustain a low level of stress or a high level of stress, the longer in time you sustain it, your adrenals start to get fatigued. And it tends to diminish its level of cortisol and DHEA, which leads to your immune system not being in check at all and going completely ape. I've got eczema and allergies, and it's a bit to do with that, really.
And you have eczema, and I don't really get it, but I get like, well, asthma
and same thing,
and same thing,
atopic,
and I get like blocked on the nose and blah blah blah. So it gets to a certain point where it's going to be really hard to get rid of those things, right? Or maybe impossible with, like, for me.
Yeah.
But I might be able to get it to a really controllable level, and potentially would it then mitigate some of, like, it being passed on to my kids if I had any?
So after your kids inherit your genetics for 50%, and they inherit your behavior for 50%.
And so that is the same for stuff like eczema and...
So if they inherit your management skill of your asthma, they might inherit the genetic contribution of asthma, but they will inherit how to actually mitigate it better for sooner. Therefore, it's maybe a bit better already, in a way. So it's a bit less expressed, really. Maybe, really. So I don't know. A lot of people say they've got asthma, but they just don't breathe. That's the whole thing, really.
Yeah.
They don't breathe out very well, really. So
and it's exactly the same with IBS. I've heard loads of people say recently, my mum had it, my man had it, and I'm like, and I do now stop myself from going in and being like, But it's very interesting.
The genetic determinism is a very easy way of doing. It has nothing to do with me. It's because my mum had it, I've got it. Nothing to do with me. It's not my responsibility, and it's not my fault.
And them saying that could actually be part of the learned behaviour of their parent, also saying it was nothing to do with me, it was my parent.
As I said, that's it. Yeah. And people around them, and all the rest, and thing, really. Take responsibility. It's your shitting asthma, and it's you need to deal with it, really. And you've been dealt a hand that is the way it is, and there's no way you can change that, really. What you're gonna do and how you're gonna play your hand is very different. That's what you can actually change.
Have some
really.
control
And
over that.
you can really start to learn how to play your hand a bit better, and those kind of stuff, really, and take responsibility. Yeah, it's your mum who gave you bloody diabetes, really, but
she also gave you life.
Yeah, that's it. And she gave you diabetes, and the thing is, you saw her use sugar as an emotional crutch as well, maybe, to solve her problem, really. So you saw the whole behavior happen, and you saw that was a great way to actually deal with your emotional arousal by actually getting sugar. That's it, really. That's why you've inherited, and if you can get rid of that already, it's pretty good. And if you can pass that on to your kids, it's pretty good. And they don't have to actually battle with that too much. They can focus on something else, really. That's the stuff. Really.
Yeah, they can find something else to.
That's it. So that whole epigenetic aspect of it, and the whole Darwinian evolution, and the whole thing, because I think it's all of that really. Wow, it's mental, really. But we all, as individuals, bury our head in the sand. It's too problematic, and sometimes you can't see the tree from the forest, really. And you need somebody else to actually interject and help you along the way to actually highlight different things, really. You can't do it yourself on your own, really. You need to be able to do it with other people who've got your best interest in mind, really. Not their best interest in mind. That's the main problem again, really. So, yeah.
That's another thing that's going around at the moment, just like within the inspirational, like entrepreneur social media space, of like getting rid of getting rid of friends that are holding you back and blah blah blah. And I think it's quite an interesting thing to talk about, because a lot of people aren't talking about it in like a rational fashion. When you talking about being around people, surrounding yourself by people who do have your best interests at heart, like Jordan Peterson says, have people around you that you can tell good news to, that don't then come back to you with their better thing, and oh yeah, I've done that and blah blah blah. It's like also have people around you that you can tell bad news to. It's like both of those things, that's when you really know, because whether someone's got your best interest at heart. Because it's like telling someone bad news is quite easy. Like, you know, member of family died, like my uncle died like a while back, and you know, if I said that to basically like, you're going to be a full-time dick just to be like, oh yeah, I had that too, and you know, I got over it or whatever. But then to tell them good news, and for them to be like, not just like, oh, why are you doing that, or why would you want to do that, or blah blah blah. It's like, that's when I've kind of noticed, it's like, oh right, okay, cool, that's fine, but that wasn't a supportive response. This is going to be a difficult journey for me.
But at times people don't have to be supportive, really. They don't have to brush you in the right thing, and to be like, come on, you sulking about your uncle and his death, and then you're milking it a little bit and things like that. Somebody telling you a bit your truth is maybe as well quite useful, and you don't maybe want to have people like, oh, poor you, I understand.
That's part of it. That's like the micro of it. That's part of it, because that's you then knowing yourself and what responses are beneficial. What does a positive response look like? Like, you to be able to understand whether those people that you're hanging around are good for you, you need to know what's positive and what's negative, and that's down to you, and that's ultimately down to your shit again, because it's like some people get comfort from someone really being like, oh, really sorry, blah blah blah, really milking on it. And so and that's, you know, that's down to the person, I guess. But yeah, it's also my brother has a saying, or I think he spoke to someone down a pub like when he was younger, and this guy they were talking about voting when it was just before the Conservative and Lib Dem coalition, and obviously every time we have a vote it's the same shit, isn't it? And half people think whatever and blah blah blah, and everyone's acting on feelings, and no one really knows what they're talking about. And this guy who he lives like on a forestry in a village nearby, doesn't have a care in the world, but like made this massive house for himself, just cuts wood, delivers it, has a really nice life, and all these people talking about politics, and he just turns around at the bar and just goes, it's all a load of bollocks though, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's a saying that my brother really likes, and I think it's one of my favourite sayings to do with anything.
Yeah.
Let's
what is important, and people who put their needs first in politics and pretend to put the needs of others first. How do they prove themselves? How genuine they are? How able they are to actually fulfill that? How cunning they are about going about doing it, or how a bit coerced they are into doing it for their own status, something like that. How do you know that? How do you know that Boris Johnson is a genuine guy? And what is he got to say about all those things?
Well, by
because we don't know too much who he is. You haven't got the ability to speak to him on your own, really.
Yeah, but you have to get a flavour. You have to get a taste of what this person's.
Yeah, but a taste of what this person says or what he does, and has he done anything, Boris? So, I mean, really, it's about what you do. It's your actions, really.
Yeah, it is, and people do judge people too much on what they say.
Yeah.
Which is just hilarious, because no one can be judged by what they say, really, because very few people are 100% accountable to what they say.
Yeah, that's it.
But when you're in a position of, running a country, and you're supposed to be inspiring some people, and
that's it.
It's like
Who's voting for those people? Who's voting for those people? Is it because we voted for the Conservatives to be in power that they have to be voted in among themselves to be able to have a new prime minister?
No. That's not what we're voting for, is it? We don't vote for.
But no,
I guess we do vote for a party, do we?
That's it. Yeah. You don't vote for a person, you vote for a party. Really.
But that's stupid within itself, because everyone, if by that standard of voting for a party, every Conservative MP should have gone forward with Theresa May's deal with the EU. Because you assume that they're all of the same ilk or flavour, or follow the same whatever.
But they're not.
But they're not.
Exactly.
So it's all bollocks, really.
So that's it, really. Were the politician having to actually make a judgment, a personal judgment, or was they making a judgment for the whole party, really? Jeremy talks a lot about that, really.
Well, Mr. Corbyn?
Cheeky Jeremy talks a lot about that, the policy of the party, and then your individual view of it, really. You vote what the party wants you to vote for, and you have to follow the whole lot, or whip you into place, really. Or in this case, that's what the policy of the party is, but you got free reign to actually express your view on the whole lot, really. Where does that start? Anyway, I think that's politics. I don't think that's super interesting anyway. But because it disgraces a bit. The model needs to be applied by far more people who actually end up voting for somebody who's having the same way of thinking. And I guess Boris is not going to have the very humanistic and very articulated way of looking at the whole lot, and in his way of speaking is not really. He's just there you're just there to manipulate people, to get more people to vote for you in order to be able to impose on the majority, on the rest of the people, your view, basically. So it's completely warped, really. That's the main thing, really. So rather than starting it from scratch, really, you could become the next prime minister, and you use the social media, and you use the discussion you have with people to be voted in the local elections, and all the people, and you've got a bit of a cult following about people because they like what you're saying, what you stand for, and then you apply what you're standing for, and then they apply what you're standing for, and everybody is going about it, doing the whole lot, really. That becomes quite an interesting thing compared to here we're catching a train that is already going in one direction, really.
Yeah.
In a way, really. And people who have actually voted Labour, why would they be interested in seeing what's happening with Jeremy or with Boris or any of the Said or Sadiq or whatever who they are doing, really? This is just conservative politics. It's just not their way, really. It's not until the next general election. What do they do now to prepare the next general election to try to convince more people to vote Labour, really?
It's so painfully group labelled, so painfully polarised.
Yeah, and it's so painfully not relevant to individuals, really, and to other people. And no, not to other people, to a group and to a country. Because that's the main thing, really. It's the universal stuff, really. Everybody wants their needs met. That's the beauty of the archetypal way of doing it, and we've got different ways of meeting them, really. The set of laws we have in the country, all those kind of stuff and things. The way it's done, the historical way. We need to be a great country again. Oh, wow. Like when we were doing triangular commerce for sugar.
Yeah.
Selling slaves
yeah.
for sugar.
We went everywhere and took their resources.
That's it? Yeah, brilliant. That's going to be good.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about the other day. So hang on, exactly when were we great before?
That's it. We've never been great, really. We've always been a bunch of thieving bastards, really.
Yeah.
Whether we are French or British or everything, really. That's the main problem, really. But we've done some good things as well.
Of course, it can't all be bad.
The Brits have actually made the abolition of slavery possible.
Yeah.
And the Netherlands was the last one to sign the whole thing, really. So, yeah, I guess, we can't really... That's where progress comes about a bit. And that's what the interesting thing is, really. We need to be quite optimistic, quite positive, and we need to look at what's good about the situation we are in and how we can change it, and how we can implement the stuff and put the things in place to actually change it, really. And it's the same for an individual person, really. How is it you motivate yourself to do the change and to go from that template to the next one? Who's going to help you meet your needs more easily? Because this template is obviously not.
Yeah, but maybe you
you
just figure out how to... I don't think any party's going to help you meet your needs more easily. Well, obviously within reason, but from what we have.
But if the state is there to actually take over your way of doing, and they're telling you what to do, it's going to be brilliant.
It's going to affect you, but the state would have to do something pretty dramatic for the majority of people not to meet their needs. Like people can figure out a way to meet their own needs.
Well, I don't know. The state of health of people in the UK is maybe a way of showing that the state has taken over from people their ability to maybe, and they've incentivized them a bit indirectly on how to actually meet their needs, no? Why would there be so much depression and anxiety and eating disorder?
Yeah, but we've taken a flip on the argument of last week where I was saying I don't think the state does enough to, I guess, if you dare I use the term, enlighten people into the fact that they are in control. Like they can be in control of getting their emotional needs met in a balanced fashion. Yeah. And so you were like, no, it's people's own shit. But we've kind of taken a flip, but we haven't, in that I don't think the government does enough to enlighten people into that it's their issue and it's their shit, and they can sort it, and here are some resources on how to, but we don't have all the answers, no panacea and all that, but what you're saying now is that they can do stuff to oppress someone's ability to get their needs met in a balanced fashion.
With some of the decisions they make, yeah, of course.
Yeah. Like what?
Well, I don't know, to look at the health care system, and I don't know, you've got you're 12 stone overweight and you've got a bad hip, and we give you your new hip, really. And maybe the fact that you were 12 stone overweight was actually maybe one of the things you could have mitigated the most easily in order to avoid maybe damaging the new hip you're gonna have.
Yeah, you might just fall straight back into the exact same issue and damage the new hip.
That's it. George Best, we talk about that. George Best syndrome a little bit, really.
What's George Best, footballer?
Yeah, the footballer. Yeah, he had a liver. He was drinking and philandering quite a fair bit, and he had the opportunity to have a new liver, and he carried on being an alcoholic. And he buggered his new liver again. So he had a second chance to do the whole lot, but he was not very incentivized to actually change his behavior prior to something being done to him, which would have actually enabled him to lengthen his life, really.
But that's, I think, a lot
So how
of
do we
that
go
is
about,
people,
really?
people not knowing, like, people aren't conscious of the fact that
Drinking too much is gonna fuck your liver up.
that's not a very good example.
Yeah.
But so recently, this is something that's happened recently, which I wanted to talk to you about. Nike have started using plus model mannequins.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen this. And there's been obviously loads of people saying that's really positive. And then I think the Telegraph, which is not a paper that I particularly like, but they wrote an article saying that it's completely ridiculous that they've done this, and they're normalizing a woman of that size who is more than likely, like the statistics suggest that she's if not diabetic, she's pre-diabetic, which is not a good thing. There's a drain on the NHS, which I completely agree with. I'm not saying that Nike shouldn't do it, but I think it's irresponsible of them to I think it might be irresponsible of them doing that.
I don't know. If the population on a bell curve and everybody in the middle is X size, well, maybe they are actually putting forward a model that represents the majority of people.
Yeah, but it's...
Or are they
then,
putting in place somebody who's actually representing only a minority of people? And because the minority wants to be so much having the attention and is so badly politically correct to actually do the whole lot, that, it becomes a problem, really. But Nike, what do they want?
Sales.
Yeah.
And they've done it for that reason, because it's caused a lot of talk. And,
that's it.
And some people, like mainly socially left people, being really positive about it, and then people on the right, sadly, also like being negative about it. And sadly, those people on the left, I think, are a little bit warped in their way of thinking about it. The people on the right are definitely warped in their way of thinking about it. But normalizing it, like putting something on there, which I guess represents how the clothes fit on on a plus size model, even though it's sportswear, is just, I just don't really know what to think of it, because I don't think I follow a lot of people that are very positive about no diets, which I agree with, as in like, you know, obsessing about diets and diet pills, for example, which I completely agree with, but then not talking about the dangers of being that overweight, not just for yourself. It's like it's like we've spoken about loads of times, like how are your decisions affecting your life and those around you?
Of course.
So it's like if you're pre-diabetic and then you're diabetic and then maybe it gets worse and you become massively obese, then you're probably it's gonna affect your family around you, and let's hope that you don't have kids, because it's 100% they're gonna be born into a world with a shitload of your baggage that you couldn't figure out. And I'm not saying that Nike having a plus size model is going to like increase that or exacerbate that. I just don't think it's not, definitely not solving a problem, and it's definitely not talking about it.
It just polarizes people to talk about the whole lot for Nike to make more sales. Because they got more airwave times, they got more stuff, they got more bits and bobs, really. Is it good that overweight people do a bit of sports?
Yeah.
Maybe it's good. Yeah. Well,
a little bit. Probably.
Is it good to portray a minority of people on billboards of things? Maybe it is. Let's focus just on the positive of it, really. I'm pretty sure there's lots of negative, really, but it could be quite an interesting thing, really. And a lot of kids born in families where the parents are overweight are not really overweight. Some are, some aren't. Because the kids are going to come out of the whole stuff one way or another. They'll have to make their decision, really. Because some kids coming from very not overweight families are going to be very overweight. So the baggage the people who are not overweight is going to put on their kids is maybe going to lead them to be overweight. That's the thing, really. That there's no... that doesn't... we can't think about it like that.
Yeah, so the correlation of someone being overweight and then that baggage being passed on being the fact that they get overweight.
Yeah.
It's like, it could be anything.
It could be anything.
They could have another emotional crutch.
Exactly.
And then, I see.
Exactly.
Yeah, you're 100% right.
And then people born in a family which are really super fit and all the rest and thing might actually be very overweight as well. The kids might be very overweight. whatever. Maybe because whilst the people who were exercising so much, they were not paying too much attention to their kids. Really. I mean, really. We can't really argue about the whole lot. Really, Nike does it for not to spark. Do they want to spark a debate about the whole lot? Do they want to polarize people? Yeah, potentially, because they want to make more sales, really, and they want to tap into the market of people who are that size, which is great. Because they can sell exercising wear to those kind of things. There's a billboard about vaping. Click and vape. Those kind of stuff. It's as simple as that, really. So, because vaping is very good. Yeah, well, is it? Well, I'm not too sure. How long has it been around? How long did it take for tobacco to become really a bad thing, really?
And then, scientifically, and then how long did it take to be in the public eye to be a bad thing, and then still how many people smoke.
That's it.
And then with the vaping thing, maybe you're vaping a little bit more than you would have smoked.
That's it.
Yeah.
And maybe you got more likely to have an autoimmune disease because of the mycelium from the glycerin in the whole lot are mimicking a bit cells, and they go really much deeper into your lung, and they are in very close contact with your immune system, and maybe you got more likely to have lung autoimmune disease really than actually cancer. Where it's based. To be done it in moderate fashion.
Not doing either.
It's not made to make you do it in a moderate fashion, because it's made for you to consume and to make some person profit.
Always.
Full stop.
Yeah.
So that's it, really. I think it's quite clear cut. You see the whole lot. Cars. Yeah, cars. Well, cars kill people. Huh? There's quite a lot of people dying on the road. That's it, really. Do we advertise cars still?
That's why I was thinking was
yeah,
quite
of course we
interesting.
need to advertise car because it's employing lots of people, it's a lot of progress, there's lots of electric modifications, there's a lot of big debates, there's going from A to B, there's a way of all the rest and things, but it's a lot about privacy, it's a lot about control, it's a lot about security, when actually it's maybe not the case. It could be a communal type stuff, a different way of looking at electric cars and not owning the car and just buying the use of the car. It's like a micro leasing, so you go from A to B, all this kind of stuff, and then you take another car to go back home, and the next morning you go and park it and somebody gets back in, and it's not really your car. You don't really own a car. You just pay for the travel you do from A to B, rather than traveling from A to B, and then your car is paying, and you pay for your car for it being sat for 8 hours in the whole thing, really. But it creates lots of jobs, there's lots of industry, exports, design, all the rest and thing, all the ambulances that are needed. You need to build ambulances as well to go and pick up people who've been mushed in accidents, all the rest and thing. You need plenty of all the rest. It's so intricate, really. It's brilliant, it's awesome, it's fantastic. That's the main thing, it's mind-boggling how great the whole stuff is. Until people start to be a bit freer, and as soon as they start to look at the whole lot and be like, whoa, am I doing that for the right reason for myself? How much meaning does it bring me?
That's what I was asking you earlier. How
that's going to be a bit tricky.
What, when people start doing that?
But that's going to be a bit tricky, because all of a sudden it's going to be a bit like, no, I don't want my hip replaced. That's it, really. I'm going to really lose my 10 stone and see a little bit how it pans out, and I'm going to really look at working on the pain and all those kind of stuff and things like that, really. Yeah, so it could be a great benefit for the NHS as well. It's a great benefit for the individual, great benefit for everybody else. That's it, really. And not only is he going to get rid of the pain in his hip, but he's going to get rid of his type 2 diabetes, he's going to get rid of quite a lot of stuff, his comorbidity factor, maybe he's going to live a bit longer, really.
You might be able to slay a few dragons at once.
Slay a few dragons, get up in the morning, slay dragons, that's all what we do, really. And Nike, yeah, great. I think it's just...
Well, I like what you said about it, because it's so easy, like, as much as I like to think I'm aware of my susceptibility of being polarized, it's like that situation polarized me not on the left or the right side, just on my own
Yeah.
side. And I'm sure if I wanted to, I could find a little online group that thought the same way as me.
That's it.
But just, you saying, well, I just think we should focus on the positives. There are positives in there. Let's focus on those and maybe not spend too much time thinking about the negatives.
Negative, that's it, full stop. And then he cut the crap a bit, is great. Large people being exercising is great, and large people, the proportion of large people is maybe a bit greater, and that's the proportion the Nike cannot tap into to sell their thing. So there's more children who can do in sweatshops in India to do the whole lot and things like that. Really, is great as well. Without being too sarcastic, I was looking at something about bottle and plastic being recycled in India and making lots of fiber for shoe making, for sportswear, all those kind of stuff. So this, I think the sportswear is leading a very interesting trend of actually using recycled polymers in order to be able to do clothing and shoe wear and things like that. Really.
There's the Ocean Cleanup Project has started. Do you know about that? It's like a 16-year-old kid from Holland came up with an idea of a cheap, feasible way to get a load of plastic from the sea. It's essentially just loads of long, like oblong, inflatable plastic things in a massive line. And it just floats by itself around the ocean for a while and just uses the currents and picks up a load of plastic in it. That started. He came up with the idea when he was 16. I think he's like 23 or 24 now. And then there's so many cool innovations within little things. It's like we talk about sorting our own life out and then sorting maybe helping your partner or your family or your community. And then once you've got that really good, then you can maybe do something bigger. And I love the idea of someone doing something big but still niche. It's like this guy just wants to clean up the plastic, and he's clearly a very forward, like progressive thinker, and he's an engineer, so he's very logical and comes up with feasible ideas, and it's like economically viable. But they're like, what else? You must have other ideas and stuff. He's like, yeah, I do. And he was like, well, maybe you should do something else, like Elon Musk, like all these things. He's like, yeah, I'm just taking my time. It's like he's got probably the financial backing and all these other things that he needs to do loads of different things. But he's just like, I'm just going to do this one thing. I'm going to do it really well. And if that one thing starts off being your bedroom, and then the next thing starts off being maybe your job that you don't particularly like, but you're going to give it everything. It's like, then build it up, and then maybe you can take on more.
Exactly.
I love that idea so much.
That it's one little step at a time, and focusing on the positive. There's loads of positive. Humans are not a scourge on the surface of the earth.
Say that again.
Humans are not a scourge.
Scourge.
Yeah, they are not like a disease.
Like a cancer.
Yeah. On the surface of the earth.
It can definitely seem that way sometimes.
Or you might have been warped in a way of thinking that it's that way. Really.
So it can seem that way.
Because there's so much positive, and so much people are actually trying to mitigate the effect of what we do, really, and the recycling of it, and it creates jobs and all the rest. Really, that's progress. And progress is really positive as long as we let it progress, and we don't stifle it back too much.
Yeah, and progress isn't a straight line. It's not always going to be upwards and onwards in a straight line.
Sometimes it's going belly up, and sometimes we make big mistakes. Oil spills, Amoco Cadiz, Exxon Valdez, Torrey Canyon. All those stuff in the 60s and 70s, and then we did the shipping lanes in the channel, and we did two hull boats, because it was really valuable merchandise that the petroleum company were losing, and they were losing quite a lot of the media. They were getting media attention, not in the right fashion, really. So it was all of their interest to actually change the whole stuff a bit, really, and to make it safer. And there's been no major deep sea horizon was another one, but that's a new way the new problem is done, and I don't think there's gonna be as many deep sea horizon problems as there's been oil spills from a badly done tankers, really, because the whole change is gonna occur much faster this time around because they've learned it really well, and then the whole way they're gonna sequestrate the whole lot and do the redundancy things, all those kind of stuff, I think is good, really. So every time, he has to take a thing, but we learn from our mistakes. We don't learn from all the good things, really. We do, really. We learn from messing it up, really. And we are built like that, really. There's no changing that. That's the algorithm, really.
Yeah, you just got to kind of go with it.
Yeah, and be a bit positive. I think the green movement is not very positive. I think the whole health way of looking at things is not very positive. I think the politics we are talking about is not very positive. I think we are not... overall, there's a massive increase in pessimism and nihilism. Oh yeah, well, what's the point? What's the point? We're going to be dead anyway. Yeah, well, okay. Brilliant. There's a good bridge in Tilbury as well. Well, yeah, because that's it, really. What is it you do, really? A bit, really. And if it's that negative, if it's that horrible, if it's... I mean, it becomes really depressing as well, really. It's great. There's tomorrow. There's another day tomorrow, really. Well, are you going to be able to do a bit more tomorrow than today, really? Towards sorting your shit out and helping others to sort their shit out and all the rest, really. It's easy to say you're an osteopath, you see lots of people who got problem and you solve their problem and the whole lot and thing, and then it's really meaningful, and then your job is so rewarding for you, type stuff, really. I hear that a lot, really. And my job is not rewarding at all. Why is it not? Okay, well, you don't have any hobbies, you don't see anybody, you're on your own, you don't go and play ping pong.
And it's like people think that you just came to the UK, became an osteopath, and then just had loads of clients, and then that was it. That's it. Knew everything.
Yeah.
And it just worked out for you really, really well.
Yeah.
It's like even people who do have it easy still have their own struggles and have to work for stuff. It's all relative.
Yeah, but if you're quite positive and if you take your time, it's all gonna work out fine. And if you got a plan, if you want to achieve something, shame when I came to the UK, I thought I was going to be just 10 years after setting up my practice. I should have said I'm going to be just 1 year after setting up my practice. It would have been 9 years less of a struggle, really. Because I set up in my head it was going to take me 10 years, really. Which it did. I should have thought about it being 1 year. In 1 year, I'm going to be sussed. It'll be fine.
And then potentially fail at that, but maybe be 50% of the way.
But I could have tried it 9 times.
Exactly.
I could have tried it 9 times.
Yeah.
More.
Yeah.
And it would have been 10 years. Yeah. No, that's the thing, is to look positive, is to be a bit less pessimistic and to really believe in how good progress is, how good thinking about new things and old things and looking at finding out who we are, trying to set goals and have a bit of a direction, really. I think that's the main thing, really. It's good. I think if we were a bit more positive, it would work so much better, really.
It's a good point to leave it on, I think.
Yeah. Cool.
What's
the time? 9 o'clock?
7 minutes to.
7 minutes to 8? 9?
No.
Cool. No, it's super interesting, those stuff.